Hi, this is Gene Hammett with Core Elevation. I'm with Chris, and I'm going to let Chris introduce himself, but I just want to tell you, I really respect this guy. He knows a lot about WordPress, web design, programming, you name it, he's been a part of it. And I really, I can remember the first time meeting him. His engagement with the audience as a speaker was really amazing. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, I have a day job. That day job is to manage product development, and particularly new products. And I manage a team of folks that do that. And we do it in the enterprise space, so it's all corporate development. And then in my afternoons and evenings, I do some coaching and work with WordPress companies who are looking to find better leverage in the market.
And I'll add to that because he's a very avid blogger. So check out his blog at chrislema.com and follow him on Twitter at chrislema. So you can get in touch with Chris many different ways.
Yeah, I blog over at chrislema.com daily. So every day there's a new post.
I was just reading it earlier, and we just set this up a few minutes ago, and I said, give me a few minutes so I can put on a shirt. You get the joke, and maybe they will too if they read your blog.
Yeah.
Chris, let's jump right into this.
Sure.
You know, at Core Elevation, I work with web designers, probably similar to the way you do. We probably come at it from different angles, so we really complement each other as opposed to competition, in my perspective. But I've noticed a problem that web designers in general aren't really able to describe the value that they bring to their clients. And if you can't describe value, it's really hard to get the rates that you want to get paid and get the right kind of projects from the right customers. Can you talk a little bit about value as it relates to web projects?
Sure. A lot of folks, whether you're a developer or designer, a lot of folks jump into what I call the solution space really quickly. So they're often immediately articulating all the things they can do. And I find that if you really want to kind of get into an interaction and a relationship with a customer in a way where you can drive the value up, deliver that value, and target higher revenues, you really need to spend more time in the problem space. You need to understand what's the challenge that people are facing, the real world challenge. And when you understand that deeply and well, first, people will trust you more. And second, you can really target the values you bring to the table and the experience you bring to the table to those specific challenges. So it's all about sitting, or I use the term marinating, but marinating in the problem space rather than jumping too quickly to the solution space.
Yeah, and if you want to get more detail on that, I know he's written a blog about that very conversation because I remember reading it. I'll link that up in the blog post. And when you get that right, when you stay in that problem space, Chris, tell us what happens with the client when it comes to pricing, because I have my opinions, but tell us from your perspective.
Well, it's an issue of trust, right? So pricing doesn't sit in a vacuum. Pricing is contextualized by the relationship. People who have a deeper sense of trust will take you at your word and will often haggle less than people who don't trust you and feel like, you know what, it's just my duty to negotiate down. And so I find there's a lot less negotiating. I find that rates stay up higher when you develop trust, but you can't develop that trust unless you sit in their shoes, unless you sit in that problem space. The other thing that happens is if you can articulate back clarity and urgency around that problem space, most of the time those customers will turn around and say, okay, you get me. You get what's going on for me, and because I can trust that you get me, I can leave you to make the major decisions. When people don't feel like they can trust you, then they're going to box you in, shorten the project side. They're going to have to manage all the risk, and that makes it harder.
Makes me think of two things. One of those is the staying in the problem space is one of the parts to doing value-based pricing. Yeah. I know you agree with me there. And the second one is it's really an issue of control. If they trust you, you can take control to deliver a solution that works toward their goals as opposed to them micromanaging you, which is another problem that web designers have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's jump right into this. I'm preparing for a speech We're both speaking at WordCamp in Los Angeles this weekend, and my speech is all around measuring success. So let's just talk a little bit about what do you think is important about measuring success for web designers so that they can make the changes necessary to deliver value for those customers.
Well, if you don't know where you're trying to go, then you're already there, right? You just declare the win right now. So the reality is, if you're trying to get somewhere, the first thing you have to do is define where the where is, right? You got to say, here's my destination. This is what I'm trying to get to. For some people, that's $5,000 a month in recurring revenue. For some people, that's $20,000 a month in recurring revenue. It all depends on who you are, but you got to set a target. And if you decide, okay, this is the destination, this is where I'm headed, then measurements, right, and the analytics that are associated with that are the tools that help you, fundamentally adjust and course correct to get to your destination.
Yeah, I agree with that. So let's jump right into tools, because once you've identified what you're measuring and what you're going for your clients, everyone's using Google Analytics. 100% of every web designer that I surveyed over the last few weeks uses Google Analytics, but very few of them scratch the surface on really using the advanced features, and even less use A/B testing, heat maps, or any of the other products out there around marketing automation. Can you talk about some of the top tools in your world of WordPress around measuring success?
Sure. I think it goes to the question of the methodology and the way I work. So a lot of people will start with the tools. They'll pick some nifty tools. Then the tools will give them some nifty data. And then they'll try and, increase whatever measure that they've landed on in the data. So if Google Analytics is your tool and you get page views, then you're going to just try and get more page views. And, if you're using Google Analytics to look at visitors, you're going to try and get visitors up. Or maybe you see bounce rate in your dashboard, so you're going to try and get bounce rate down. The problem is that all you're doing is playing with a tool, you're playing with a measurement, and you're trying to maximize or minimize a measurement that someone else said was important, right? And that goes to your first point, which is you have to know what to measure, right? So before I ever get involved with tools, a lot of the work I do is the analysis and the creation of hypotheses of what I think is happening. So I start with this is what I think may be going on, right? If people are departing, or if I'm not getting the conversion I want, or I'm getting one kind of conversion, but it's translating to attrition downstream, what do I think is happening? And I make some hypotheses, and that tells me what measurements I should go look for. That tells me then what tools I should use, and that tells me what measurements in the tools I should configure and what parts of the tools I should use. So it's all a question of your methodology and your approach. But I think, as you were saying, if you define where you're trying to go first, in my world, if you create some hypotheses, you'll be better equipped to pick some tools. As for tools, I do use Google Analytics, that's for sure. I also use another tool called Woopra, which is WOOPRA. It is not a WordPress-specific tool, but it does measure, whereas Google Analytics measures site performance, so its predominant paradigm is the site. It starts with pages and load times and visitors and page views, but that's about your site. Woopra comes at it from the perspective of the behavior and the people that are trafficking through your site. So that's really interesting. It's a different take. And then I use a WordPress specific product called Orbiter, which is orbtr.net. And Eric Wolf, the CEO over there, is a great guy and really deeply understands a lot of the marketing automation tools that we were talking about. And so that tool plugs into WordPress specifically. It integrates with comments. It integrates with forms, Jetpack forms, and Gravity forms. And that way, anytime someone's giving you information about themselves, they're also identifying themselves so that you can look at their stream of traffic as they've navigated your site, and that tells you more information. So those are some tools. Obviously, there's a handful of others that you could get involved with if you're looking at metrics. I don't know if you noticed, but or if you even know, I produce and hang out and attend the WP Water Cooler, which is a WordPress podcast, and we do that show every Monday morning. And just 2 shows ago, episode 51, I think, was all on analytics. And so we talked a lot about all the different analytical tools that are there. You can go all the way up to tools that cost $15,000 a month. And I was explaining this, and I was laughing because I demoed that product, and I got a beautiful note from the CEO who just said, "Thank you, sir, but you don't have enough data to, use our platform, right?" Because they do some predictive analytics, and I was testing it for another client who did have real data, but I thought, oh, I'll connect it up to my data.
Yeah.
I don't clearly make nearly enough money for this product to make any sense. So they're like,
how much do you have to make to use $15,000 a month in analytics?
Well, if you're Best Buy or Target, you definitely be looking at using them. So there are a series of tools. Mixpanel is another product. Mixpanel is not a WordPress specific tool, but if you're using WooCommerce, for example, to do your commerce, there's an extension that will connect you up to Mixpanel, and it will let you do some additional metrics. You're serious about metrics when you start looking at, cohort analysis. You start looking at customer lifetime value, attrition ratios. I mean, those are more complicated. You can do some of that in Google Analytics, but you really got to know what you're doing.
Right, and you got to put it together. I use Orbiter too, and I keep telling Eric, because I interviewed him last week around getting measurements and getting his perspective as well. I really like Orbiter because it allows me to prioritize who's coming through my website. And not that I'm doing it in a kind of sneaky way, but I'm just like, I'll put something specific for that person because I know where they are and what they're looking at. I'll go deeper. So I really like it, and it's specific level, whereas Google Analytics is the site level, that whole piece.
And those are just different kinds of metrics. So they're answering different kinds of problems. And, you can do some very specific conversion configurations inside of Google Analytics. And then you can do some very specific, put some people in some orbits and only show certain orbits, a widget in your sidebar. And those are very different tools for very different problems.
I do like that tool. So let's jump on to this next question, because I want to be respectful of your time and make this as compact as possible. When you get the tools installed, you really got to measure, and you've got to adjust things. You got to continue to repeat doing that, testing things. I love your use of hypothesis, because I wrote a video earlier this week around hypothesis, and that's the first time I've thought of hypothesis since high school science class. But let's jump right into this. The fourth step that I've come up with is document the successes. I don't see enough web designers that are able to document the successes that they have for their clients, and therefore promote those successes to get more clients and get higher rates. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, as you know, I write every day over at chrislema.com. So I have a huge value for writing. And I think the dynamic that you're describing is that more developers and designers need to be putting fresher content on their sites with regularity. It does two things. Number one, it develops their voice, and that helps prospective customers determine whether or not that's the kind of person you want to work with. And second, it allows them to articulate how they've delivered value, right? And they can do that without being without beating their chest. They can do it in a way that is just helpful, right? If you've solved a particular problem for a customer, tell some other customers who might have that problem. Sometimes people think, I don't want to share that tidbit because then no one will come to me and hire me. I try and write helpful articles every day, and it doesn't decrease the number of people that come and want help. It increases it.
I totally agree with that. The last part of that is promoting, because the cobbler's children doesn't have shoes as it relates to web designers. You've heard that many times before, but take those success and actually go out there and find other clients in the same space or having the same problems, and share your success, because build it and they will come doesn't work for websites, and it doesn't work for the content you put on your blog either. So you have to go out there and be active.
Yeah, I think there is an aspect of build it and they'll come on the blog and for writing that Google does for you. So the more fresh content you write, so if people were writing regularly, there's a study done that said people who write less than 5 times a month get 5 times less traffic than those who write more than 20 times a month, right? So if you're writing every business day, you're going to get 5 times more traffic than if you write once a week. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but Google will bring, people for real articles. Assuming you've written a real article, Google will bring traffic, and it's amazing. One of my clients sent me a note today that just said, "Oh my God, like I tripled my page views the day I wrote the new article and the day after, just by writing a new post. I know I've read this everywhere, but I really should write more." I'm like, yeah. But yeah, you're right. Other than Google bringing them to you, it's not going to happen by chance. It's not going to happen with you just sitting back. So you do need to be out there. I find that if you start every engagement with the customer by asking them how they define success, and then you deliver that success well, you deliver it cleanly, and you deliver it on time or even slightly early, on budget, those customers also are fantastic resources to share their story with others.
Absolutely.
But you have to ask them, right?
You do have to ask them. And I think even better is when you measure success and can put a number to it, whatever is important to those clients in that project, and let them tell people the number.
Yeah.
That is really powerful, because when you have a client that says, "I have a great looking website," okay, fine. But if they say, "I had a 32% increase in conversions to my subscriber list or my leads," that's powerful.
Yeah. So I think you have to be willing and comfortable for asking people for referrals. You got to be willing to ask them to promote you and to share that story with others. I do a series of business calls with people, and when I'm done with a call, they'll say, "Well, is there, what can I do? Is there anything I can do?" And I'll just say, "Yeah, you can tweet your friends and let them know that you had a great business call with me," and I will get other people to follow up with me and say, "Okay, 3 of my friends had business calls with you this week, and they all say it was great. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I feel like I'm missing out if I'm not having a conversation with you." Right?
I can attest to this, because when we talked a few months ago after we met in Miami, you asked me to do the same thing, and I'm going to do it again today without you asking. So I appreciate your help here, getting getting a full picture of this story. I've got some new things I learned, some new tools, but also just backing up what I already thought. So I can't wait to put together this presentation. I'm also putting together an infographic around it. So I'm putting a lot of work into the pre-work that I wouldn't normally do for a presentation, because I'm a last-minute kind of guy. But I'm working on that, and I can't wait to see you on, I guess, Friday night. You're going to be there Friday?
Yeah, I will see you Friday night.
All right. Well, if you guys aren't on chrislema.com signed up, go ahead and do that. I have one of my clients today. Again, we're not competition. I sent them your website because they were asking about Genesis. So I found that blog. I remembered reading about Canvas and Genesis, you doing the comparison.
Yeah.
There's so much value in what you put out. It's completely different than what I do. I can't wait to connect people with you every time I have that chance. So thanks,
That's
Chris.
Great. Well, thank you.
All right, we're going to sign off and talk to you soon.
Take care.